Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man whom, for at least 3 reasons, did not make Jill Ellis's US Women's National Team World Cup roster. His name is Taylor Rockwell.
Hello, buddy. How you doing?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Can you guess the 3 reasons?
I mean, one is that you introduced me as a man, so I'm going to guess that.
Yes, so gender is the first one.
And because you're mean, I'm going to guess the other 2 are talent?
I mean, yes. Like, can you dribble like Tobin Heath?
Oh, no, I'm saying that because you're mean, I'm going to assume that the other 2, as in I'm a man, and then talent, and then also talent.
Talent and talent.
Yes.
No, the 3rd reason is that you haven't previously...
I'm secretly Canadian.
You haven't previously won a Women's World Cup.
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah, because that is one of the factors that Jill Ellis has used here, right? There are, say, Allie, Krieger and Morgan Bryan haven't been around a lot lately, but they were there in 2015, so they make the 2019 roster.
All right. Okay, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I assumed it was going to be because I hadn't been dropped from her roster selections 2 years ago and then called back in. That's how you get included in the squad.
So the roster is out for the Women's World Cup. 23 names. By popular demand, we won't just go into talking about the roster without naming it first, because a lot of people might not have seen it. So you ready to read out some names, Taylor?
Am I?
Are you? All right, let's start with goalkeepers. So 23 names total.
By the way, listeners, view behind the curtain, I was not. That was me stalling. I am now, though.
Well, I am. So I'm going to start us with the 3 goalkeepers. Ashlyn Harris, Alyssa Naeher, Adrianna Franch, excuse me. But France maybe watches in France. So Alyssa Naeher is the starter.
Yeah.
We knew Ashlyn Harris would be the backup. Adrianna Franch is maybe the surprise, but not really surprised.
From what I read from, I believe, Meg Linehan, it's actually sort of unknown who the actual backup will be. Maybe it's Ashlyn Harris because of the longevity and experience, but basically neither one has gotten consistent minutes or considerable minutes. It's been Alyssa Naeher consistently. So I think it might just come down to who looks better in training is the actual number 2.
I feel like, and the history with Jill Ellis is, all right, Alyssa Naeher's the starter. Ashlyn Harris has traditionally been the backup. And third choice we'll just figure out in May.
I mean, honestly, yes, first of all, but also given the way some of the other roster selections went, I think you're probably safe in assuming that veteran status factors into these decisions.
All right. And then defenders. Would you like me to read it, or are you ready now?
I'll go ahead. We've got a whole 7 of them.
That's one less than expected.
I'm realizing, didn't really think this out. Starting to realize I'm a little bit more negative about this roster than I thought I would be. There are 7 defenders. Abby Dahlkemper, Tierna Davidson, Crystal Dunn, Allie Krieger, Kelley O'Hara, Becky Sauerbrunn, and Emily Sonnett. So a lot of expected names in there, and then one sort of unexpected name in there, that being Allie Krieger.
And no traditional left backs. We'll get into that maybe when we dig a little deeper.
Sure.
Okay. Midfielders, you got 6 of them. It's Morgan Bryan, kind of a surprise because she's been around for a while. Julie Ertz, Lindsey Horan, Rose Lavelle, Allie Long, and Samantha Mewis.
So there's your midfield. Daryl, quick thoughts before we move on?
I mean, there's only one proper defensive midfielder.
Nah, it's fine. And then there are 7 forwards: Tobin Heath, Carli Lloyd, Jessica McDonald, Alex Morgan, Kristen Press, Mallory Pugh, and Megan Rapinoe.
So I think the big thing to note is 7 forwards.
Yeah.
Most teams don't take 7 forwards.
No, they don't.
So we essentially, US plays 4-3-3, right? 3 forwards, a centre forward, a left and a right. We've got 1 spare for every position and 1 extra just in case.
I think it's usually 3 goalkeepers, 8 defenders, and then it's usually 7 or 8 midfielders, and whatever's left is your forwards.
Well, it's normally your shape and then treble for the goalkeepers and then double for each one, right? So really this should have been 8-6-6.
Yes.
If we're going 4-3-3. Okay.
I would have gone for 8-6-7-5-3-0-9, but it's fine, whatever. Yeah.
We've been kind of negative.
Yeah.
It's worth noting there's just a lot of talent on this roster.
I think that's the thing, is we're negative because so many of these names are sort of kind of automatic selections that really you
There's no Landon Donovan left out.
No.
So there's
there's
nothing crazy like that happening.
And, well, I guess technically Landon Donovan was left out, but I take your point.
But that's what I'm saying, is there isn't a major thing like that.
Oh, no, I'm saying literally Landon Donovan is not on this roster, so technically he was. But yes, I take your point. So, it's a lot of, you can pick the starting 11, basically. You can pick a lot of the substitutes. So I genuinely can't tell if my hesitation, my trepidation about this roster is genuine, or if it's just one of those, Brian Ching, it's got to be Taylor Twellman. Those sort of weird little wrinkles that maybe don't matter, except I do think some of these decisions may end up being problematic for the U.S.
Well, it's interesting that you made a USA 2006 roster comparison, Brian Ching, Taylor Twellman.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people I think correctly, that in 2006, Bruce Arena took a lot of the people he knew and trusted because 2002 had gone so well.
Yeah.
And for example, John O'Brien went when he wasn't really fit.
Nope.
Right? So maybe here's 2 names to start with. The 2 surprises on this roster, I think, are Allie Krieger and Morgan Bryan. Right. Both members of the 2015 Women's World Cup winning roster. Both haven't been around for a little while in this squad. Do you want to we'll do one at a time? Maybe we'll talk Allie Krieger first because she's the defender.
Sure. Allie Krieger was depending on who you're going with, like Steph Yang would say frozen out, dropped by Jill Ellis, and then it goes up to she just kind of wasn't in the plans or had injury issues or whatever.
We knew what she brought to the table is kind of the thing Jill was saying, basically. Right? We already knew we didn't need to sort of test her.
Yeah, and I think this is where maybe this is I don't know why. Again, I just have a little bit of critical thought about this team or something, but that's where I feel like that's a kind of easy way to explain away. Yeah, what, you didn't call her in for 2 years because you knew what she offered, so you could just bring her back in any moment. I kind of subscribe to Steph's idea, which is maybe Jill Ellis kind of tinkered with some other options, tried some other things, didn't quite get anything to work or couldn't find anything to work, and so she went back to Allie Krieger kind of at the last minute. And that's where... So that's one way of seeing it. But then the other way, which I think is also a fair way to see it, is that it's Allie Krieger, who has tons of experience, is a veteran player for this team, has been there before, was there before in 2015.
Have you seen the Jill Ellis quote? It's that no moment is too big for her.
Yeah, which is probably true. And so I think that decision makes sense. It's just seen within the context of not having gotten very many call-ups or minutes until very recently.
Yeah.
And the fact that I believe I'm correct in saying we kind of have 3 right back options and 1 left back option who, as you said earlier, isn't really a left back.
So let's look at this. Crystal Dunn will be the starting left back. Kelley O'Hara is the preferred starting right back, but she has ankle problems. So I think the situation is that Kelley O'Hara is the attacking right back that Jill Ellis wants, but you can't guarantee she'll be available, right? The backup recently for right back has been...
Except as a backup for left back.
The backup recently for Kelley O'Hara has been Emily Sonnett, who really is a centre-back, right? Who kind of can play right back, doesn't offer the same thrust going forward. So I think that's why Allie Krieger's on the roster.
Yeah.
But I think, the big trade-off is we have Crystal Dunn, who's not really a left back, but he's just such a good soccer player, such a smart soccer player, that she can play left back for the US Women's National Team. There is no backup left back, really. Jill Ellis listed Kelley O'Hara as one of the backup left backs, but as John D. Halloran pointed out on Twitter, you can't name your starting right back as your backup left back.
No.
Unless she's going to be running from side to side for an entire game.
Yeah, it's a bold strategy. And then as Caitlin Murray summarized in a tweet, the dedicated left back depth chart starts and ends with Crystal Dunn.
Yeah.
Which is definitely true. It's Crystal Dunn, basically. I know Jill Ellis mentioned that Tobin Heath could be a left back if the situation required it. Tierna Davidson is probably the other one.
Yeah.
But it's still it's just sort of that little bit of imbalance. And that's kind of, again, a thing that I feel like is kind of there in a couple different spots. There's little bits of imbalance, which when we're talking about the U.S., the favorite to win this, to repeat, I would say, or be World Cup champions again.
We think? Right? Are we seeing that through an American sort of myopic lens? Or is
I guess the way correct? I'm explaining this right now, yes. Which is that, and so you're looking at this as what happens if Julie Ertz, our best player, gets hurt? There are lots of other teams who are wondering,
we'll talk midfield.
How do we deal with not having a player like Julie Ertz? Or we wish we had Julie Ertz. So there are nuances and subtleties to a lot of this that maybe I am worried about too much because I would like to win again. But I see things here that if they go wrong could be very problematic for the team.
So here's my more positive take on the defense. Here's the plan. The plan is Kelley O'Hara is the starting attacking right back. Allie Krieger is the backup if we need her. And then at left back, Tierna Davidson is the fill-in for Crystal Dunn, right? And essentially they've tried to, or Jill Ellis has tried to, fill 8 positions with 7 players by saying, okay, Emily Sonnett can fill in at centre-back or right-back in a defensive way if needed. Tierna Davidson can fill in at centre-back or left-back if needed. And we just think we've got enough spread there to cover all eventualities.
Yeah.
And she'll only be wrong when she's wrong.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, and that's the case.
It might work, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And I feel like if this does work out, if it's not an issue, we probably won't ever discuss it again. Not because we don't want to be wrong, but just because it's not a sort of oh, well, she never called it. She never had a backup for Julie Ertz, but Julie Ertz played every minute of every game and was fine, or Morgan Bryan deputized, so it wasn't that big of a deal.
Well, I'm talking specifically about the defense.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, but I feel like then it still is the same thing, that if it works out, it works out, and then we're never going to talk about it. But if it doesn't work out, then we're probably going to talk about it.
And if we do have to talk about it in a way that's become a problem, I think the name we'll be talking about is Casey Short.
Yeah.
The left back who has been part of 20 of 21 Jill Ellis rosters over the last couple of years, but did not make the final roster.
She didn't, and this is where statistics can take you down a path, because you're absolutely right. I saw that stat too. John D. Halloran, you already mentioned earlier, pointed out in 2018 she only played in 8 of 20 games, hasn't played a single game.
Okay, so she's been a roster member, but not a starter. starting 11
exactly.
kind of
And so that maybe explains why she isn't in this squad. That said, she is an actual left back who plays as an actual left back. Crystal Dunn, I love Crystal Dunn. We had her on the show.
Of course.
I like what she brings to the table, but she is a very attacking option. If you want someone to come in and see out a game and be a defensive, like kind of lockdown defender, I don't know if they have that to be a left back.
I think they think it's Tierna Davidson, but then you're sacrificing one of your centre backs, and then you get into moving the pieces around to try and cover all the gaps.
Yes.
All right, we've definitely talked about the defence.
Yeah.
Obviously, Becky Sauerbrunn and Abby Dahlkemper are the starters. That's what we expect. Before we move on to midfield and forwards, should we talk about today's sponsor?
Let's do.
Today's show is sponsored by Roughneck Scarves. Roughneck Scarves, you've heard about them on the Total Soccer Show. You may not know they have an extensive collection of US women's national team scarves.
They certainly
so if
do.
you're getting geared up for the Women's World Cup, this is the place to go.
They did not have to awkwardly remove a Casey Short scarf from the equation, but there are many, many, many options depending on who your favorite player might be. There's an Alyssa Naeher one in there if you find yourself having those goalkeeper loyalties.
Yeah.
But you've got Becky Sauerbrunn, you've got Carli Lloyd, you've got Alex Morgan, you've got Crystal Dunn. I can keep going, but you could just go check it out yourself if you so wanted to.
I think I'd go Julie Ertz if I was picking a scarf, not least because I just think it's the best design.
Oh, are we actually picking? Because I go Rose Lavelle every single time.
Because of the scarf design,
Yes.
or just because you're your favorite player?
Even though she appeared on the Cooligans, so too did Allie Krieger. And I feel like if the U.S. women's national team wins, the Cooligans are going to try to claim credit.
We will not hear the end of it.
We will not. We will not. So I'll forgive Rose Lavelle for that.
Okay.
But, otherwise, yes, I'm all about Rose Lavelle.
Do you know, actually, the one player who's not on the roster, and I think is just no longer playing, Klingenberg, still has a scarf. So if you want a proper 2015 throwback, we always thought Megan Klingenberg was like the unsung hero of that 2015 team. There is a Megan Klingenberg scarf.
She's still playing, but maybe retired. I think she's still playing.
I've seen her on
for
TV.
Portland.
I've seen her on MLS broadcast as well.
There you go. Maybe you want to wear her. Maybe she'll wear her own scarf for the broadcasts.
So if you go to roughneckscarves.com, you can just click on the there's a shop for scarves. You scroll down, US Women's National Soccer Team. You can see all the USWNT scarves, including a lot that just say USWNT in big letters, big and bold. I like it. You can get 20% off the cost of any scarf that you see there. How do people do that, Taylor?
They use the promo code Total Soccer Show?
How do you not know after all these years?
Because we have so many different ones.
It's Total Soccer Show.
Okay, cool.
All one word, Total Soccer Show.
Because every time I guess, I'm always like one day behind. So it's like, is it TSS? No, it's Total Soccer Show. Yeah.
Total Soccer Show for 20% off at roughneckscarves.com. We'll put the link in the show notes, and we'll also put the discount code in the show notes in case Taylor needs another reminder.
These quizzes were funny when it was Albert who didn't know them. It's less funny when I don't know them. But thank you very much.
You've done the show for 10 years.
That's fair. I mean, that's my excuse. Too many ads. So thank you. Just kidding. There's never enough ads. Thank you very much to Roughneck Scarves for sponsoring today's episode, for having all the scarf options for both the U.S. women's and men's teams, as well as Major League Soccer, USL, and the NCAA. We greatly appreciate it. Should we talk midfield?
Yeah, let's talk midfield. A reminder again of the names. It's Morgan Bryan, it's Julie Ertz, it's Lindsey Horan, Rose Lavelle, Allie Long, and Sam Mewis. Your starting three are definitely going to be Julie Ertz as the defensive midfielder, alongside Rose Lavelle.
Sorry.
Alongside Lindsey Horan and Rose Lavelle.
Yes.
Sort of two number eights, but with an attacking thrust, which again is kind of the key to this roster, right?
Yeah.
A lot of attacking going on.
Yeah, and so then I think you look at then you have the kind of obvious deputies if you need them in Samantha Mewis and Allie Long. Morgan Bryan, I think, is brought in maybe to play as one of those eights, but possibly to kind of spell Julie Ertz if the situation requires.
Well, that's the big question, right? If Julie Ertz gets injured, she is the defensive midfielder. She is the chief midfield slide tackler and enforcer. She can play a bit, but that's her main role, right? To cut things out, stomp on people, essentially. Yep. If she gets injured, or if there's a centre-back crisis, she has to go and play centre-back, I don't see a like-for-like sort of tough as nails defensive midfield replacement. Is that fair?
I have a half-baked theory about this one.
Okay.
I've not seen this talked about anywhere else, which I don't mean to say is it's my own idea. It's more so indicates that I might be losing my mind. But Julie Ertz was a center back in 2015 and is now playing as a holding midfielder.
Yeah.
I look at those defenders and you think there's a lot of center backs there, and I do wonder if maybe the idea is if Julie Ertz gets injured, Becky Sauerbrunn goes and plays as a holding midfielder, or one of your other center backs.
We're already thin. We only have 7 defenders. You can't be sending one of them into midfield.
But you have 4 center backs in there, so 4 potential center backs. So I do wonder if maybe that's a solution Jill Ellis is going to go for.
If it is, I'd like to have seen that sometime in the last 2 years.
She
Believes Cup would have been a time to try that.
It's Fine.
So who actually could play? Like, I think maybe Allie Long could fill that position, but she's more of a pass the ball around, in my head at least. I'm not necessarily a US Women's National Team expert. She's more of a spray the ball around kind of player than a slide tackle you kind of player.
I think the honest answer is that there isn't one, and there won't be one. If Julie Ertz gets injured, it means that the United States isn't going to play the way they would if Julie Ertz were in there. And I think if you look at this team, it does. I think Allie Wagner was making this argument on Twitter that this team seems like a team that is kind of set up for worst case scenario, we'll beat you 6-5. And so I think if you
kind of like the Australia game recently, that was what 5-3.
Yeah, I mean, you look at a lot of their recent games. I think we did the math, and in like 4 of their recent games, it was 10 goals for, 10 against. Not necessarily what you're looking for at a World Cup, but I do wonder if there are some injuries to some of those more key defensive-minded players, if you just go all-out attack, and that's going to be the plan.
So should we be celebrating this? Should we just be saying, all right, Jill Ellis has just picked a super attacking roster, and she's going to go out, and we're just going to attack teams, it's going to be thrilling. Maybe there's an argument for, this is going to be fun. Let's just enjoy it.
I guess we'll know in July. I mean, I think again, with some of the concern I have about this team, my plan is to approach this World Cup the same way we approached the 2015 one, which is take it game by game and see if you can figure out what they're trying to do. If the United States struggles and only gets a 1-0 win or a 3-1 or 3-2 win, don't look at that as like, oh, see, here we go. We're in a lot of trouble. It's not going to happen. Look at it as like, okay, what are they building towards? What are they trying to do? And what's working and what isn't? And does it change in the next game?
Okay, so I'm looking at the roster and I'm thinking, okay, we open against Thailand, then we play Chile, and then we play Sweden.
Yeah.
I'm very confident that this roster has, even if we do the let's win 6-5 Allie Wagner suggestion, this team is getting out of the group stage, right? What I worry about is deeper in the tournament, if we have a quarter-final against one of the bigger nations, and it's a real challenge, and suddenly Julie Ertz is injured or suspended, or Crystal Dunn is injured or suspended, and we don't have those backups to, be the more like lockdown player against the bigger nations, that's when I start to worry. When we go and try and win 6-5, but we're lacking our defensive midfielder and our left back, suddenly you're losing 7-5 instead. You know what I'm saying?
I do, and I also think that's where like the kind of confusing nature of the knockout round could be problematic for the United States, because if you're uncertain of who you're going to be playing, a lot of times the United States has kind of locked down progression to the next round. On many occasions, it's been after the first 2 games, they know that they're going to finish top of the group. Yeah. Because we're playing the strongest opponent in the group last, I don't think that they have the luxury of being able to rest, because by then you might end up looking at that and thinking, oh, there's a decent chance we're playing France in the next round, and we have to win this game. So then you kind of do have to look at that situation as we can't really like go all out attack against a team if we're trying to play for like a 1-1 draw. And then
like the game against Sweden?
That's where I think that game against Sweden could be more challenging, than just the fact that Sweden is the best team aside from the United States.
But my bigger point is, even if we get out of the group, at some point you play against a big team, right? And the deeper you get into a tournament, the more suspensions you accrue, the more injuries you accrue, and that's when the thinness at defensive midfield or left back or other places might start to be a problem, just as we need it the most. If it's against, I don't know actually how the bracket will work out, but if we're playing France or Germany or someone like that, or even England, who are suddenly something of a threat, or Japan, suddenly we could be thin when we don't need to be thin.
Well, that's when we go 2-2-6 and it all works out, because that is obviously the United States' strongest point here, is the kind of plethora of attacking options. I think it's one of the reasons why Jill Ellis kind of had to take as many as she did, is because if you leave out, I would say like the one that maybe people could have thought you could leave that out as Jessica McDonald, but that's a player that Jill Ellis talked about extensively in the press conference when discussing this roster, about what she brings to the table, about why she's so important, and most importantly about how she is a just proven number 9 who, if you're chasing a game, if you need a goal, you can put in there. She can win balls in the box. She can knock stuff down. She can get goals. She can cause problems for the opponent. So you include Jessica McDonald in there, and now you're looking at who's she going to drop? Tobin, Heath, Carli Lloyd, Alex Morgan, Kristen Press, Mallory Pugh, Megan Rapinoe? None of them are getting dropped.
Casey Short.
Yeah.
I honestly think the top-heavy forwards and the one-short defence is Jill Ellis hasn't said this, because why would you put 2 players against each other in public? But I think they've sacrificed Casey Short for having McDonald. And I also think part of this again is that Bruce Arena 2006 thing, or maybe a Marcello Lippi 2010 Italy thing, where you take all the players that did well for you before. Carli Lloyd. So Alex Morgan is just starting centre forward, right? Rapinoe to her left, Tobin Heath to her right. Carli Lloyd has been the player that has sort of come in and played centre forward in the last 20 minutes or so for the US. But she's not necessarily, if Morgan goes down or is injured or suspended or any of that kind of stuff, Carli Lloyd maybe can't go 90 at centre forward and doesn't offer you enough mobility at centre forward in the way that Alex Morgan does. So she's really on there as kind of a luxury player, right?
Yeah.
And maybe a locker room presence and a winner and a World Cup final hat-trick scorer. But she's the extra centre forward when you've already got Jessica McDonald, right?
I mean, yeah, I think we've seen her. Maybe it was against France. It might have been against Australia. We've also seen Carli Lloyd play in midfield on occasion.
But again, she's not going to go multiple games in midfield, right?
I would guess not.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, and we've seen the same for Tobin Heath as well. So I think the other thing that you can look at with this roster is that a lot of the players here give Jill Ellis a lot of non-conventional flexibility in the sense, or unconventional, I guess would be the better word to say. That, like, I think what she was talking about with Tobin Heath, that like Tobin Heath can play like left wing, left center midfield, maybe left back, or can play here and here. And I think I
went on the right wing there. I want to destroying left backs on the right wing.
Yeah. I think a lot of these players can play in a variety of positions. And again, I think that is something that we should maybe, again, not that I love, but that I think we should kind of prepare ourselves for is a few different, like, wait, what's happening now when it comes to some of the starting 11s we're going to see in this tournament?
So either this World Cup is going to go down as Jill Ellis picked an attacking roster and we went out there and still either won the World Cup or came really close, right?
Yeah.
Which, you can not win the World Cup and still have a glorious tournament in many ways, right? Like we did in 2011. Or this could be the last gasp of US women's national team arrogance.
Yeah.
Because we've talked a lot about how other nations are catching up. France is catching up. England's catching up. Netherlands, Australia, maybe Spain. Like all these nations are on the rise. Japan are already there. And it may be that we went out with like, all our players are good enough to cover any problems that we have. And this could be the tournament where we find out that's not the case anymore. You need to be a bit more conservative when you pick a roster.
Yeah, or a bit more like adaptive in that, like, I go back to Germany in this past World Cup, in the past Men's World Cup, where Jogi Löw didn't bring in Leroy Sané because he kind of wanted to stick with the people that what brung him there, and we see how that worked out. And now Jogi Löw's still there, but he's having to change things up pretty considerably. And I think we talked about Casey Short. We haven't mentioned McCall Zerboni. She is the person who could have replaced Julie Ertz. That's her job. She's a central defensive midfielder.
I haven't seen enough of her in the NWSL to have strong opinions about her, but everybody that I read and the people that I trust say she's the backup defensive midfielder. And then the only sort of recent footage I have of McCall Zerboni is her giving that team talk at halftime.
Yes.
Do you remember this?
Yes.
There was a swear word and there's a what do winners do, but it was really convincing. And it felt to me like that's the kind of attitude that would be great to have on the team. But I really think, again, that Jill Ellis has gone with, well, Morgan Bryan was with us in 2015 and was really important in 2015. She's an experienced World Cup winner. McCall Zerboni has not gone to a World Cup or won a World Cup. So therefore, Morgan Bryan gets the nod. And I really worry that we'll look back on that and say, that was a mistake. Because wasn't there the quote from Jill Ellis from their press conference today, the teleconference today, was that, like, World Cup is not a time to sort of give people experience. It's a time to win the World Cup.
Yeah.
I just think, like, if you only ever go with people who've been to the World Cup, then eventually you run out of players.
Yeah.
If you do this again for another 2 cycles, you have a bunch of 50-year-old players.
Yeah, and I think also that's
who are no longer professional athletes. They just happen to play once every 4 summers.
Who also are maybe carrying injuries. And that,
yeah,
and that
definitely
is,
if that's the situation.
And I think maybe that's the thing that I'm having a hard time shaking. Because, again, I really am trying to figure out, like, why I have this sort of, like, a little bit of concern about this. And I think it's because the most recent major tournament, like, to compare this roster to is not the 2015 Women's World Cup. It's the 2016 Olympics.
It looks more like the 2016 roster than the 2015 roster.
It sure does.
Right?
Yes, and what was it, like 15 of the 18 from that roster are in this roster?
Yeah.
And that did not go well, and you look at that, and we were concerned at the time about, like, Megan Rapinoe was not fit, like, was coming back from injury, I believe, didn't play at all in the group stage, and we pondered, like, why is she there?
Yeah.
And it's Megan Rapinoe.
It's because of her experience and locker room presence and all that, right?
But now you're making that same argument about Morgan Bryan and Allie Krieger, and that is a red flag to me of, like, wait, hold on, we had concerns about this and it was kind of an issue, and now there are 2 players on this roster who are carrying injuries, and Jill Ellis thinks, oh yeah, we could play Kelley O'Hara 15 minutes in the first game.
Yeah.
Like, I think I saw her mention something like that in the press conference. And again, it's like, but is that what you're supposed to be doing when you're preparing for a World Cup? Is it bringing in players who hopefully possibly can give you 15 minutes in the first game? And maybe, again, that's where experience trumps those types of concerns. That's where Jill Ellis is the national team coach, and I obviously am not. But I'm being honest in saying that is a thing that has me a little bit concerned.
All right, so let's maybe pitch or, like, settle on a feeling that we have.
Sure.
Right? I'll give you mine. Mine is I'm kind of excited about the attacking nature of the roster, but also concerned. And I think that's a fair way to look at it.
Okay.
That's my sort of thesis on this roster.
Yeah, man, I can't. I'm going to be negative. Wow, I'm really surprised by this.
Right.
I think it comes down to you and I. Like, here's the, like, weird way of explaining this. You and I have had conversations recently about how I don't always go with my gut, and it usually extends to movies. That, like, I will watch a trailer for something and be like, that didn't look good. but I'm going to see it anyway. It's probably going to be good. And then it ends up not being that good.
Was this like, that doesn't look good, but I really like the 1994 Jurassic Park, so I'm just going to go and see it anyway?
I've abandoned Jurassic Park. Don't worry about those. But like the new Hellboy. Like, I love the Guillermo del Toro Hellboys. And I remember watching that trailer and being like, something seems wrong about this. I don't know about this, but I kind of tried to talk myself into it. Did not see it, and then it was awful by all accounts.
Okay.
And I guess...
So this is a win for you.
And I think so, except that here, I guess what I'm feeling is there have been moments since since that loss to France that I think we had Caitlin Murray on, and I was like, I'm a little bit more freaked out. She was very calm about it. I was just a little bit more nervous. And some of the recent results haven't made me feel like, oh, it's okay. Like, we're still winning. She's just experimenting with this one. It feels a little bit more like...
you can maybe play central midfield.
Exactly. and I guess that's where I am with this, is that I don't want to just be blindly optimistic because it's the U.S. women's national team. They're going to win everything. That's how it works.
You're not being tricked by the intellectual property. You want to see the actual reviews of the movie.
There we go. Yes. Or I want to see the more competitive
2015
product.
is the intellectual property, right?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Is that fair? Like, I guess I can't tell.
Your way of saying it was more fun.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the US women's national team, obviously the World Cup starts early June. First game is June 11th against Thailand, then Chile, then Sweden. We have 3 warm-up games before that.
Yep.
May 12th against South Africa in California. May 16th against New Zealand in St. Louis. May 26th against Mexico at Red Bull Arena in Harrison, New Jersey. I'm slightly concerned that the warm-up opponents are not that strong. Mm-hmm. But I guess that's kind of what you do for warm-ups.
Also preparing us for the reality of maybe our first 2 opponents.
Yeah.
And so with that in mind, I'm fully prepared for us to win the group, 2 wins and a draw, or 3 wins and a huge goal difference, and I will feel better, certainly. So I'm not just trying to say it's going to be bad and I'm preparing for it, but I definitely I want to see how they deal with some of these concerns we have in the upcoming warm-up games, and then what we see from game to game in those first 3 group games.
All right, and obviously you can expect more coverage from us of the US Women's National Team, including, I'm not going to name any names because I don't think anything's booked yet, but we're going to talk to people who know more than us
I think
about this roster.
My plan is to have Caitlin Murray on next week
to
sort of go over some of this with her. And I DM'd a little bit with her before the show to make sure that she could be on there before just, throwing it out there and hoping she'd hear.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk to her about some of my concerns and see if this is just maybe me being nervous, Taylor, or if this is actual grounds for nervousness.
All right. Well, Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk about the US Women's National Team roster with me today.
Always my pleasure, my friend.
Listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll be back on Friday with a listener question special.